You are on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of May 15th, 2025. A huge number of events occurred today, so let's get started. We'll go straight to the situation on the front lines. Let's go through the key points step by step, starting with the South Donetsk direction, where fighting continues for the settlement of Bogatyr. Despite the fact that the majority of mapmakers have already marked the settlement as being under the control of the Russian Federation, we still haven't received a clear picture or confirmation as to whether Bogatyr is indeed fully controlled by the Russian armed forces. As of this morning, we only have these particular clips showing the southernmost parts of the settlement, published by the Ukrainian side, where we can see Ukrainian artillery forces launching strikes, both artillery and drone-based, on the forward positions of the Russian armed forces. In these clips, strikes are being carried out on Russian soldier positions in this part of the village. Based on this footage, we've marked the southern part as under Russian control. However, there is still no confirmed information about the northern and central parts of Bogatyr. I remind you again that most mapmakers have already shaded 80 to 90% of the settlement in favor of Russia. But without solid proof, the fighting continues. Next, we move on to the Dnipro and Pavlivka section of the front. Today, there is only one geolocation, or rather, one piece of news from this sector. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reported in its daily briefing that during combat operations, troops from the Central Group managed to take full control of a settlement called Novoalexandrivka. Based on this information, we are not marking anything new today. Let me remind you that according to objective control footage, this village had effectively come under Russian control a few days ago. So we're not coloring in anything new, just leaving things as they are. Next, we move to the Pokrovsk section. Speaking of the southern and southwestern flanks, strikes continue to be delivered on the southern citadel. I remind you that this is the main stronghold of the Ukrainian armed forces within the settlement of Pokrovsk. The area of high-rise buildings remains the only barrier, the only location, that currently prevents Russian units from initiating a full assault on the southern part of the city. Without this citadel, Russian forces would have entered Pokrovsk long ago. But as long as this dense ant-hill of high-rises remains, Russian units are unable to even approach the settlement directly. That's why this area is regularly hit by aircraft using FAB bombs, as well as by multiple launch rocket systems and even TOS-1A Sontsepiok thermobaric systems. Now we move to the eastern flank of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. As usual, a massive number of geolocated videos and icons are being published here, including flag-marked icons. So let's take it step by step, starting with the settlement of Myrolyubivka. Today, some mapmakers made slight adjustments in this area, shading in additional farms around Myrolyubivka in favor of the Russian armed forces. Let me remind you that the Russian Ministry of Defense already reported, actually the day before yesterday, that the settlement of Myrolyubivka came fully under the control of the Russian army. Today we've received additional footage showing how the battle for this settlement unfolded. At the very beginning, we saw Russian soldiers holding a flag. In the new footage, we can observe an airborne landing in the dam area. Based on this footage, we are not making any changes to our maps. It simply serves as further confirmation of the Ministry of Defense's claims that the settlement is fully under Russian control. At the moment, Russian units are working to expand their control zone, complete the clearing of the area, regroup, and potentially advance northwest in the future, with the goal of capturing settlements such as Mykolaiivka and Novoekonomikne. However, there are significant challenges in this area. Around Novoekonomikne and Mykolaiivka, there are minefields, barbed wire, and fortified positions, so no major assaults should be expected in the near future. At the same time, Russian forces continue expanding their control zone around the settlement of Malinivka. This information was also confirmed today by pro-Ukrainian cartographic service Deep State. As of yesterday, according to various mappers, Russian units had significantly expanded their area of control in this settlement. Already yesterday, Russian troops entered the westernmost outskirts of the village. However, the Russian Ministry of Defense has yet to issue an official statement. Possibly in the near future, we will receive a report from the ministry confirming the full clearing of the Malinivka settlement. The current situation, At this moment, Russian units are trying to complete the clearing of the central part. However, some neutral and pro-Russian experts note that Russian forces have begun probing the Ukrainian defenses to the north, toward the settlement of Shevchenko 1. This area presents an interesting situation. If you look at the map, you'll see a significant number of defensive structures. There are anti-tank ditches, dragon's teeth, and a network of strongholds and more anti-tank ditches. Right now, the Russian army has effectively entered the strongpoints located between these ditches and the dragon's teeth, and is attempting to move north in order to expand the control zone and possibly enter Shevchenko 1 itself. Slightly to the east, in the area of Novaya Poltavka, fighting continues. Today, several cartographers have made updates here, including adjustments published by the pro-Ukrainian service Deep State. According to their data, Russian forces managed to clear a series of strongpoints in these fields and along the H-32 highway, including a major fortified position located southwest of the settlement of Novo-Olyanovka, a very powerful strongpoint. There is no geolocated visual confirmation yet, and we are waiting for video evidence. Still, this is a significant advance. As of now, there are no longer any fortified Ukrainian positions along this segment of the H-32 highway. It is possible that in the near future, we will start receiving reports of more intense fighting in the area of Novaya Poltavka. Today, footage has already been published showing artillery strikes on the northern outskirts, which could indicate that Russian units are gradually advancing toward the northern edges of the settlement. Overall, we can observe that the focus of the fighting is gradually shifting northward. Over the past 2 or 3 days, the majority of geolocated strikes, drone and artillery, had been coming from the southern part of the area. But now, most of the strikes are concentrated to the north. This may also indicate Russian advances in that direction. Next, we move on to the area around Novo-Olyanovka. Reports indicate that Russian units have taken control of the last Ukrainian strongpoint, located north of Novo-Olyanovka. We are talking here about this network of trenches and fortifications. This information comes from neutral mapping sources. It is a critically important stronghold, and apparently it is the final fortified position that Russian forces have managed to secure on the approach to the village of Yablunivka from the west. As you can see on the map and from open-source data, the settlement is entirely surrounded by anti-tank ditches, barbed wire, and dragon's teeth. Advancing with vehicles beyond this point will be difficult, requiring a pause for engineering units to prepare, for demining and clearing paths for heavy equipment. Obviously, with fighting approaching the settlement of Kostiantynivka, this preparation may take significant time. But on this sector of the front, the Russian side is not in a rush. Engineering units will continue working gradually, while the main Russian forces continue pushing deeper into the Klevan-Bik salient, towards settlements like Oleksandr Kaliniv, Yablunivka, Zarya, and others. Yesterday, right after we released our video, an important geolocation appeared from the Klevan-Bik direction. It refers to a fortified point located southwest of the village of Zarya. Yesterday, pro-Ukrainian sources published objective control footage showing Russian forces breaching Ukrainian defenses and storming a fortified position. In this intense assault, Russian paratroopers on motorcycles broke into the stronghold, and close-quarters combat ensued. We won't show the full video due to the graphic violence, but it clearly shows Russian airborne troops entering the stronghold. Based on this footage, yesterday we updated our control map accordingly, marking the breakthrough along the road between Greenfields and Zarya itself. Today, some cartographers further updated the map. According to various cartographic services, including neutral ones, Russian forces successfully took full control of that stronghold. If we look at the map, this was the last strongpoint held by the Ukrainian armed forces in that area. Beyond that lies urban development, or rather the village, but around Zarya and Stara Mykolaiivka, there are no more serious or reliable strongholds under Ukrainian control. This breakthrough towards Zarya, and especially this particular strongpoint, presents a critical situation for Ukrainian forces located in the southern section of the Klevan-Bik pocket, near settlements like Hanativka and Stara Mykolaiivka. Today, reports are already coming in that Ukrainian forces are urgently withdrawing from these semi-encircled areas. We are also receiving reports that Russian forces are now putting pressure on pockets of resistance south of Stara Mykolaiv. The offensive is unfolding in all directions. From the settlements of Oleksandropil, Valentinivka, Sukhaya Balka, and even from Kaliniv itself. Reports suggest that Ukrainian forces have already begun withdrawing. This process may be completed within the next few hours, if the Ukrainian side manages to pull it off. Slightly to the north, but still south of Stara Mykolaiv, the Ukrainians themselves had previously installed large amounts of barbed wire. It's likely there are some gaps, perhaps made by the Ukrainians themselves. Still, the evacuation process will be complicated by this barbed wire, which was placed during months of fighting in this area. In any case, given the breakthrough by Russian forces toward the settlement of Zaria, there is now a very high likelihood that the southern portion of the pocket below Zaria will collapse automatically, without significant resistance from Ukrainian forces. Meanwhile, further north and northeast, Russian forces continue pressing on Ukrainian positions near Romanivka. Artillery strikes and FPV drone attacks continue. This is a key area of methodical, steady action. There's no rush from the west, southwest, east, or southeast. The main activity today is concentrated on the western flank. Next, we move to the settlement of Toretsk. Over the past 24 hours, Russian units have taken control of several key strongholds. We now have objective control footage confirming the presence of Russian troops in the northern part of the settlement. The footage was published by the Ukrainian side and shows drone strikes. We won't show the entire video, but the geolocation clearly confirms the presence of Russian forces in the northern part of the town. Some cartographers have noted that in the past 24 hours, Russian forces took full control of a stronghold located just north of Toretsk. This data is being reported by neutral mapping sources as well as pro-Russian experts. It's a crucial position, and control over it effectively eliminates the Ukrainian army's ability to launch counterattacks toward Toretsk. Let me remind you that since the Russian Ministry of Defense announced the full clearing of Toretsk, Ukrainian forces have reportedly launched around a dozen counterattacks, which temporarily allowed them to regain control over 30 to 45% of the settlement. Large portions were repeatedly contested, forcing Russian forces to start over each time. However, now, with control over key strongholds around the perimeter of Toretsk, such Ukrainian counteroffensives are likely to become much less frequent, or perhaps disappear altogether. This is a major development for Russian forces. We are waiting for further geolocated confirmations and video evidence to verify this. In the area of the Siversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal, Russian units are also advancing. Today, some cartographers and experts report that Russian armed forces have managed to break through from the direction of southern Dylievka to the 05 to 19 highway and have captured another Ukrainian stronghold near the road. This information is being shared by neutral and pro-Russian sources. Additionally, this was one of the most important strongholds, and now, from the Ukrainian side, the intensity of attacks from northern Dylievka toward the south will likely decrease. This means that the chances of redeploying Ukrainian units towards southern Dylievka or the nearby railway station are significantly lower. As a result, Russian units will be able to complete the clearing of the southern section along the Siversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal. Now we move to Chasiv Yar. Today, reports have emerged that Russian forces now control approximately 85% of central Chasiv Yar. This has even been confirmed by pro-Ukrainian cartographers. Moreover, based on their data, the citadel area is either fully under Russian control or is currently in the grey zone. This suggests that the Ukrainian 24th Brigade has completely lost control of the area and is likely no longer present. While isolated pockets of resistance may remain, it appears that within the next day or two, Russian forces will complete the clearing of central Chasiv Yar, regroup, and potentially begin advancing toward the Shevchenko neighborhood, as well as toward the settlements of Stupochki, Mykolaivka, and Podilsk. We are witnessing a turning point in the battle for Chasiv Yar, and in the near future, we can expect intense combat to shift toward Kostiantynivka itself. By the way, today information emerged that Ukrainian authorities have decided to evacuate two settlements, Druzhkivka and Lyman. As for Lyman, this is understandable. The front line is steadily approaching, and fighting is expected to begin soon. However, the evacuation of Druzhkivka is particularly interesting. Russian forces are still quite far from it, So this suggests that Ukrainian command may possess intelligence indicating that the Russian army could bypass Kostiantynivka and launch an offensive directly toward Druzhkivka, aiming to encircle the entire Kostiantynivka agglomeration, including the settlement of Alexeyevo-Druzhkivka. We'll keep an eye on this situation, but the evacuation of Druzhkivka is a noteworthy development that may shift the overall understanding of how the Russian offensive on this section of the front might unfold. Returning to Lyman, evacuation has been announced there as well. Among the most important news is the conclusion of the battle for the settlement of Toretsk. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that the Zapad West grouping has fully cleared the settlement of Toretsk. Based on this report, map updates have been made. Neutral cartographers have also confirmed this information. A bit later, footage showing objective control was published, in which we can see Russian soldiers conducting clearing operations in Toretsk. The central part of the settlement was geolocated, and we can clearly see Russian troops raising the flag. So there is no doubt the northern, central, and southern parts of Toretsk are now under Russian control. However, when it comes to streets like Sosnova and Vodyana, there are still doubts as to whether Russian troops have reached the southernmost outskirts. If they had, then we would be talking not just about the end of the battle for Toretsk, but about the beginning of the battle for Yampil, possibly even for Siversk. So it seems there are still isolated pockets of resistance. And given today's meeting in Istanbul, it's possible that this news was published slightly in advance to help set a particular tone for the talks in Turkey. Meanwhile, artillery strikes continue on the settlement of Zarichny, which is gradually being prepared for future combat operations. However, perhaps the most important updates, aside from Toretsk, are coming from the settlements of Kolodyazy and Zelenaya Dolina. Over the past 24 hours, Russian forces have significantly improved their positions on this sector of the front, advancing slightly towards Zelenaya Dolina, Zarichny, and Lyman. These are the changes we've seen reflected on the map over the past day. Zelenaya Dolina now appears to be in a semi-encirclement, and Russian forces are now estimated to control up to 10% of Kolodyazy. These are the last key settlements before the assault on Lyman itself, where evacuation was just announced. Regarding Ridkadub, there are no major changes, though slight adjustments have been noted. Russian forces are gradually straightening the front line and securing control over the forest belts around the village. But no attempts have yet been made to storm the settlement itself. A bit farther north, Russian troops have made minor advances toward the settlement of Kurakhove. As we can see, the offensive continues without pause. In the northern Kupyansk direction, there have been no significant changes. Over the past 24 hours, several airstrikes using glide bombs, FABS, were recorded. Russian forces continue to systematically target Ukrainian positions, including those of FPV drone operators within the settlements, without making any direct attempts to advance. It's hard to predict what lies ahead for Kupyansk, but clearly Russian units still have a great deal of work ahead of them here. And that's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for watching, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and take care.